Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a bit different. We're going way back. Ancient Egypt, a land of pharaohs, pyramids and sand, stretching endlessly under a sun that never quite sets. But tonight, we're not here for the monuments or the legends. No mummies, no golden masks, no epic battles. Just dinner. What did the ancient Egyptians actually eat every day? Forget the grand banquets of the pharaohs and the golden chalices filled with exotic wines. We're talking about everyday people. Farmers, workers, craftsmen, the real heart of the Nile. If you're imagining gourmet dishes with spice and flair, you might want to adjust your expectations. Ancient Egyptian cuisine was simple, hearty, and rooted deeply in the river that gave life to their civilization. So, you wake up in your mud brick house. The sun's already warming the world outside, and the air smells faintly of the Nile. Your bed is a woven mat, your room filled with the soft light slipping through the reed mat doorway. It's time to start your day. Breakfast isn't fancy, but it's nourishing. The cornerstone of your morning meal. Bread. Not the fluffy, soft kind we're used to. This is dense, coarse, and sometimes gritty. The grit comes from tiny stone particles mixed into the flour from grinding the grain. Your teeth won't thank you, but it's filling. The bread is made from emmer wheat or barley, ground by hand on stone querns. Mixed with water and sometimes a touch of honey if you're lucky. It's then baked in clay ovens or over hot coals. If you're a little better off, you might have some onions on the side. Sharp, pungent, and enough to wake you up. Maybe even a few dates to sweeten the meal. You drink a cup of beer with breakfast because, yes, beer. But don't picture a frothy lager. This is thick, almost like a porridge, made from fermented barley. It's a staple, safer than the river water, and it gives you just enough energy to start the day. Once breakfast is over, it's off to work. Whether you're heading to the fields, crafting pottery, or working on the latest royal project, your stomach's full. Well, full enough. You're not exactly spoiled for choice. But the Nile's floodplain has blessed your village with fertile soil, and that means crops to feed the entire community. By midday, hunger creeps back. Lunch is light, more bread, maybe dipped in a paste of lentils or beans. If you've got a bit of luck on your side, some fish from the Nile, grilled or dried in the sun. Fish is common for the average Egyptian, though the nobility might turn their noses up at it. Vegetables are a blessing when they are in season. Leeks, garlic, lettuce, all grown nearby. Sometimes you can trade for a bit of cheese made from goat or cow's milk, but dairy is a luxury. Most of the time, it's just you, your bread, and whatever else you can scrape together. The sun dips low, the day's work ends, and your stomach rumbles again. Dinner is more substantial. A stew made from lentils, beans, or chickpeas, flavored with herbs and whatever root vegetables are around. Maybe it's cooked in a communal pot, bubbling away over a fire as neighbors share news of the day. The stew is hearty but never overly spiced. Salt is precious, and exotic spices are unheard of for common folk. Once again, beer accompanies the meal. Maybe you drink it out of a clay cup, thick and unfiltered. It's not just a drink, it's a food, a way to fill up when the stew runs thin. If you're lucky, someone's roasted a bird, a duck or a goose caught near the river. The meat's tough, but it's a welcome change from the usual fare. Night falls, and you sit outside, the cool air a relief after the day's sun. Your stomach is heavy with bread, your hands still smelling faintly of grain. You watch the stars flicker over the Nile, the river flowing just as it always has. You're not feasting like a king, but you're fed. The day ends as it began, with simple, hearty food and a life sustained by the river. So, you've made it through another day in ancient Egypt. Your stomach is full, and the sky above is dotted with stars. But as you sit there, it's hard not to think about food. What you ate, what you might eat tomorrow, and how much of your life revolves around gathering, preparing, and preserving it. Food isn't just survival. It's routine, tradition, and community. Let's talk bread. If there's one constant in ancient Egyptian life, it's bread. Your hands are rough from grinding grain every day, and your back aches from kneading the dough. Bread isn't just a meal, it's practically a lifestyle. You start with emmer wheat or barley, harvested when the floodwaters recede. The grain is threshed, pounded, and winnowed. You spend hours grinding it between two stones, pushing down with your whole body weight. Dust fills the air and the flour collects in coarse, uneven piles. When you mix the flour with water, it doesn't form a smooth, elastic dough. It's heavy, dense, and sometimes speckled with grit from the grindstone. You add a touch of salt if you have it, maybe some honey on special occasions. The dough rises only a little, left to sit while you tend to other chores. Baking is another challenge. You don't have an oven, just a dome-shaped clay structure heated with dried dung or reeds. You slap the flattened dough against the hot walls, waiting for it to bake through. Sometimes it burns, sometimes it's still raw inside. But it's bread, and that's all that matters. Once it cools, it's stored in baskets or clay pots. You'll eat it plain, dipped in beer, or with a smear of lentil paste. Sometimes you crumble it into stew to make it more filling. On feast days, you might shape it differently, round loaves or little animal shapes to please the gods. Bread is more than food. It's tradition, religion, and sustenance rolled into one. Now, let's talk about beer. This isn't the clear, sparkling drink we know today. It's murky, thick, and almost chewy. Beer is made from half-baked loaves of bread, crumbled into water and left to ferment. It's a drink that's part of every meal, a staple from childhood to old age. The fermentation process can be unpredictable. Sometimes it's sour, sometimes sweet. You strain it through a basket to catch the bigger chunks, but it's always a little gritty. The yeast and grain particles float around, giving it that dense, cloudy appearance. Beer isn't just for the workers. The pharaohs drink it too, though theirs is likely better filtered and flavored with dates or herbs. For commoners, beer is life. It's safer than river water, and it provides calories when food runs low. You drink it from clay jars, using a reed straw to avoid the floating bits. It's practical, communal, and oddly comforting. Fish is the next staple. The Nile teems with life, and fish are plentiful. You can catch catfish, mullet, and perch, using nets woven from flax or papyrus. Sometimes you spear them from the shore, standing ankle-deep in the muddy water. Fresh fish doesn't last long in the heat, so you salt or dry it to preserve it for a few days. Salt is precious, so not everyone can afford to preserve their catch. When you do cook it fresh, it's grilled over an open flame or boiled in a thin stew. Fish bones are a problem, so you pick through the meat carefully, flicking the tiny spines onto the ground. The flavor. It's earthy, slightly bitter if the fish has been drying too long. You might flavor it with onions or leeks if they're available. Richer households can afford to stew it with lentils and chickpeas, but for you, it's usually plain, served with more bread. And then, of course, there are vegetables. The fields are planted with onions, garlic, and leeks, hardy crops that grow well in the fertile soil. You might have some beans or chickpeas to mix in, but these are more common during the harvest season. The vegetables are boiled into stews or eaten raw with bread. Garlic and onions are believed to have medicinal properties, so they're not just food, they are protection against illness. You chew them raw when you're feeling sick, the sharp taste overwhelming but somehow comforting. Once in a while, you find wild greens or herbs growing near the river. You gather them quickly, careful not to stray too far into the marsh where crocodiles lurk. These greens add a bit of bitterness to your meals, breaking up the monotony of bread and fish. As for fruit, dates are the most common. Sweet, sticky, and abundant when the palms are heavy with clusters. You eat them as a snack, mash them into paste, or use them to sweeten your bread. Figs are another treat, soft and rich when in season. Honey is rare, but you might taste it during a festival. Beehives are kept by the wealthier families, and the honey is often gifted to temples. You've heard stories of cakes made with honey and figs, but they are a dream for someone like you. Tonight, as you settle down, you think about the feast days when the temple distributes food to the villagers. Meat, bread, beer, gifts from the gods. Those are good nights, when everyone gathers in the square, eating and singing under the moonlight. You fall asleep to the sounds of crickets and the low murmur of the river. Tomorrow will be another day of grinding grain, baking bread, and fishing the Nile. It's a cycle, but it's yours. Simple, steady, and rooted in the land. The days blur together in ancient Egypt. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. But food isn't just about nourishment. It's about rituals, traditions, and survival. And sometimes it's about celebration. Tonight, let's explore what happens when the usual routine is broken, when there's reason to feast. It's the time of the harvest festival. The village square is bustling. People are bringing offerings to the temple, baskets of grain, jars of beer, and bundles of onions. The priests chant prayers, thanking the gods for the Nile's generosity. You're there too, carrying a bundle of fresh reeds and a few loaves of your best bread, shaped like little birds in honor of Horus. Festivals are rare. Most of the year, you're too busy working to think about anything beyond the day's meals. But when the harvest is good, the whole village celebrates. The air smells of roasted meat, a luxury, and the sound of drums and flutes drifts from the temple grounds. Tonight the priests are cooking beef. It's not an everyday meal. Cattle are valuable, used more for milk and labor than for eating. Only during major festivals or temple rituals is beef prepared. The animal is sacrificed, its blood collected as an offering, and the meat divided among the villagers. You can hardly wait to taste it. The meat is simmered in a pot with leeks and garlic, the rich aroma drawing everyone closer. When it's served, it's tender, fatty, and almost melts in your mouth. A rare indulgence, and one you savor with every bite. Alongside the beef, there's a thick porridge made from barley. It's seasoned with a few wild herbs, nothing fancy but filling and warm. The priests bless the meal, thanking Osiris for the fertile earth and Hathor for the joy of gathering together. There's also bread, of course. Special loaves baked with honey and figs, dense, sweet, and sticky. You chew slowly, trying to make it last. Someone hands you a cup of strong beer, frothy and pungent. You drink deeply, letting the warmth spread through your chest. As the night goes on, people sing and dance. A storyteller spins tales of the sun god Ra battling the serpent Apep, his journey renewing life every dawn. Children chase each other through the firelight, their laughter mingling with the clapping of hands and the beat of the drum. After the meal, there are nuts, mainly almonds and a few wild pistachios collected from the desert fringes. They're cracked open one by one, the soft flesh a treat compared to the usual fare. Someone offers you a date cake, a rare delight. It's moist, spiced with a hint of cinnamon, and your mouth waters as you bite into it. The older villagers talk about how things were when they were young, how the floods were higher, the crops richer. You listen, nodding politely, though you've heard the stories before. Life has always been a cycle, bound to the river's moods. Some years are good, some lean, but the rhythm never changes. As the night deepens, someone pulls out a reed flute and plays a soft, lilting tune. You lie back on the cool ground, watching the stars glint like shards of white stone. Your stomach is full, your muscles relaxed, and for a moment, life feels almost luxurious. But not all food stories are this cheerful. Some nights when the harvest fails or the river runs low, the meals are sparse. You remember the stories from your parents, years when bread was made from ground acacia pods and wild grass seeds, barely edible and bitter. Drought means harder bread, thinner beer, and more reliance on stored grains. If the famine lasts too long, the stores empty, and people begin mixing clay with flour just to stretch the food a little further. Children grow quieter, too weak to play, and the village falls silent except for the priests praying for the floodwaters to return. Those are the hard years when your stomach aches with emptiness. You find yourself dreaming of dates and honey cakes, waking with the bitter taste of dry bread still in your mouth. There's no dancing then, no singing. Just waiting, hoping the gods remember your village when the rains finally come. But tonight, the village square is alive. Someone has brought roasted duck, a rare luxury, the skin crisp and shiny with rendered fat. You're given a small piece, and you chew slowly, savoring the gamey flavor. It's seasoned with cumin and coriander, spices borrowed from a traveling merchant, and you marvel at the rich, fragrant taste. The feast winds down, and families gather in small groups, sharing the last bits of bread and dried fruit. The priests continue their prayers, thanking the gods for another year of survival, and you can't help but feel grateful too. Life is fragile, dependent on the river's whim, but tonight your belly is full and your heart is light. As you walk back to your hut, you think about the food you'll have tomorrow. Maybe more bread, maybe just some boiled greens if the fish don't bite. But tonight, at least, you feasted like a king, or as close to it as a humble farmer ever gets. You lie down on your mat, the sounds of celebration fading into the distance. Sleep comes easily, your dreams filled with roasted meat and honey bread. The stars wheel slowly overhead, and the river hums its ancient lullaby. Morning arrives with the first light creeping over the horizon. The village stirs slowly, the cool air still holding onto the night's calm. You stretch, muscles sore from yesterday's work, and listen to the soft rustling of the reeds by the river. It's time to start the day, and that means breakfast. You reach for the leftover bread from yesterday, now a bit harder but still edible. You soften it with a splash of beer, breaking it into chunks and letting it soak. The bread absorbs the liquid, and you eat slowly, savoring the slight tang of fermentation. It's not a feast, but it's enough to get you moving. Today, your task is in the fields. The wheat is tall, golden, and ready for harvest. You and your neighbors gather, scythes in hand, bending low to cut the stalks. The work is rhythmic, swish, cut, gather. Your hands quickly become coated in dust and the prickly husks of grain. When the sun is high, you pause for lunch. A few women bring bread and a pot of lentil stew, flavored with wild garlic and a dash of salt. You ladle some into your bowl, letting the steam warm your face. It's hearty and thick, and you mop up the last of it with a piece of bread. Someone passes around a jar of dates, sticky and sweet, a welcome burst of flavor after the earthy lentils. You eat in the shade of a sycamore, wiping sweat from your forehead. The Nile glimmers in the distance, its waters lower than usual this year. A few men discuss the harvest, hoping it's enough to fill the grain stores. The last thing anyone wants is a shortage when the river doesn't flood as expected. Back to work. You gather the cut stalks and tie them into bundles, stacking them for transport to the threshing floor. It's a dusty job, and by the end, your arms and legs feel like they're coated in sand. As evening approaches, the village comes alive again. Cooking fires are lit, and the smell of roasting vegetables drifts through the air. You head home, tired but content, and your wife greets you with a bowl of fava bean stew. It's thick, with chunks of onions and a hint of cumin. You dip your bread into it, the sauce soaking into the crust, and savor the hearty flavor. You've been saving a small jar of honey for a special occasion. Tonight feels like a good time. You drizzle it over the last piece of bread, letting the sweetness fill your mouth. It's a small luxury, and you can't help but smile as your children beg for a taste. After dinner, you help grind grain for tomorrow's bread. The quernstone is heavy, and the work takes time. Your wife kneads the dough, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. The children watch, occasionally stealing a pinch of raw dough when they think no one's looking. The loaves are shaped into small rounds, flattened slightly, and placed near the fire to rise. Once the coals are ready, the bread is slapped onto the hot stones, baking slowly as the scent fills the house. Fresh bread is always a comfort, even if it's coarse and dense. Your wife hums a song as she works, something about the river and the harvest. It's an old tune, passed down from her mother, and you find yourself humming along. The bread comes out warm, the crust crisp from the fire. You tear off a piece, steam rising, and take a bite. It's chewy, dense, and tastes like home. You think about the fishermen who bring in their catch at dawn, trading fish for grain. Sometimes they get lucky with a big catfish or a bundle of small perch. Other times they come back empty-handed, muttering about the Nile's changing moods. Fish is a blessing when you can get it, roasted, dried, or boiled into soup. When fish is scarce, you make do with dried beans and onions, sometimes flavored with a bit of sour milk. Cheese is rare, but when someone manages to make it, it's a cause for celebration. It's crumbly and slightly salty, perfect on warm bread. The last of the beer is poured into clay cups. You drink slowly, letting the mild bitterness cleanse your palate after the sweet honey. It's not strong, just enough to take the edge off a long day. The children gnaw on leftover bread, their eyelids drooping, and you know they'll sleep well tonight. The fire crackles low, and you lean back against the mud brick wall, watching the shadows dance. Life is hard, but there's a quiet rhythm to it. Work, eat, rest, repeat. Your hands are rough, your back sore, but tonight, with a full stomach and the soft hum of the village around you, it doesn't seem so bad. Tomorrow will be more of the same. Grinding grain, baking bread, tending to the crops. But for now, you close your eyes and let the night sounds wash over you. The river murmurs softly, and the wind rustles through the palm trees. Somewhere in the distance, a jackal howls and the stars blink lazily above. The day's worries fade, replaced by simple gratitude. You've worked hard, eaten well, and spent time with your family. It's enough. In a world ruled by the river's moods and the gods' whims, it's enough. The night wraps around you like a soft linen cloth, the kind your neighbor weaves from flax pulled from the Nile's edge. Your dreams are filled with the scent of warm bread and the faint sweetness of honey, but morning comes too soon. The first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, painting the mud brick walls of your home in a gentle glow. The air is cool, carrying the damp breath of the river, and you rise from your woven mat, your body still heavy with sleep. The village is stirring, soft voices, the rustle of reeds, the distant bleat of a goat. It's another day in ancient Egypt, and as always, it begins with food. You step outside, the ground cool beneath your bare feet, and head to the small courtyard where your family prepares meals. The fire from last night is just embers now, but your wife is already kneeling by the grindstone, her hands moving in a steady rhythm. The quern grinds emmer wheat into coarse flour, the sound a low, scraping hum that blends with the morning's quiet. You watch her for a moment, the dust rising in faint clouds, settling on her arms. This is the heartbeat of your home, grain to flour, flour to bread, bread to life. You fetch a clay jar of water from the Nile, careful to avoid the murky edges where silt clouds the surface. The water is cool, and you pour it into a wide, shallow bowl, mixing it with the flour your wife has ground. The dough is heavy, sticky, and speckled with bits of husk. You knead it together, your hands pressing and folding, the motion as familiar as breathing. There's no yeast today, but the dough has a slight tang from the natural fermentation of the air. You shape it into flat, round loaves, pressing your thumb into the center to mark them as your own. The fire is stoked with dried reeds, and you place the loaves on a flat stone heated by the flames. The scent of baking bread fills the air, warm and earthy, mingling with the faint fishy smell of the river. While the bread bakes, you slice an onion with a flint knife, the sharp sting making your eyes water. Onions are a gift from the fields, grown in the black soil left by the Nile's flood. You set them aside, along with a handful of dried lentils from the storage pot. Breakfast will be simple, as it always is, but it's enough to carry you through the morning's work. Your children emerge from the house, rubbing sleep from their eyes, their hair tangled from the night. They sit cross-legged by the fire, watching the bread with eager eyes. You tear off a piece of the warm loaf, still steaming, and hand it to them. They chew slowly, the crust crunching between their teeth, the grit from the grindstone an unavoidable texture. You dip your own piece into a paste of lentils, boiled yesterday and flavored with a pinch of salt. The salt is precious, traded from a merchant who passed through last month, and you use it sparingly. To drink there's beer, thick, cloudy, and slightly sour. You pour it from a clay jar into a cup, the surface frothy with bits of barley. The children sip from their own small cups, diluted with water to make it milder. Beer is more than a drink here. It's a meal, a source of strength, and safer than the river's water. You take a long swallow, feeling the slight buzz of fermentation wake your senses. The sun is climbing now, its warmth spreading across the village, and you know it's time to head to the fields. You wrap a few extra loaves in a cloth, tucking them into a woven basket along with some dried fish and a small clay pot of lentil paste. The fields are a short walk away, the path winding past mud brick houses and clusters of date palms. The Nile glints to your left, its surface rippling in the morning breeze. You pass neighbors heading to their own tasks, some to fish, others to weave or carve. Everyone nods, their faces familiar, their lives tied to the same rhythm of river and grain. In the fields, the wheat stands tall, its golden head swaying. You join a group of men, your sickles gleaming in the sunlight. The work is hard, your back bending as you cut the stalks, but there's a quiet satisfaction in it. The harvest is good this year, the Nile's flood having left the soil rich and dark. You work in silence mostly. The only sounds the swish of blades and the occasional call of a bird overhead. By midday, the sun is fierce, and you gather in the shade of a sycamore tree for lunch. You unwrap the cloth, revealing the bread, now slightly hardened but still good. You break it into pieces, passing it around to your fellow workers. Someone has brought a basket of fresh leeks, their green tops bright against the dusty ground. You trade a piece of fish for a handful, biting into the crisp, pungent flesh. The fish is salty, dried in the sun last week, and you chew carefully to avoid the tiny bones. The lentil paste is shared too, scooped up with chunks of bread. It's thick, with a faint earthiness from the clay pot it was cooked in. You eat slowly, savoring the moment of rest. The conversation is light. Talk of the harvest, the river's level, the upcoming festival for Osiris. Someone jokes about the crocodiles lurking in the marshes, and you laugh, though you've seen their eyes glinting in the water at dusk. The meal is quick, and soon you're back in the fields, the heat pressing against your skin. The wheat piles grow higher, and by late afternoon your arms ache, your hands blistered from the sickle's handle. But the work is nearly done, and the thought of dinner keeps you going. You imagine the stew your wife is preparing. Fava beans, perhaps, with onions, and a sprig of wild coriander plucked from the riverbank. As the sun dips low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, you head home, the basket lighter now, only crumbs remaining. The village is alive with the sounds of evening, children playing, fires crackling, the low hum of voices. Your wife greets you with a smile, her hands dusted with flour. The stew is bubbling over the fire, its scent rich and comforting. You sit by the fire, your children at your side, and for a moment the world feels complete. Dinner is served in clay bowls, the stew thick with beans and vegetables. You dip your bread into it, the flavors blending. Earthy beans, sharp onion, the faint bite of coriander. The bread soaks up the broth, softening its crust, and you eat with your hands, licking the last traces from your fingers. There's beer again, poured from the same jar, its familiar tang a perfect end to the meal. The night settles in, the air cooling, the stars emerging one by one. You lean back, your stomach full, your body tired but content. The river murmurs in the distance, a constant in your life, its waters feeding the fields, the fish, the very grain in your bread. You think of tomorrow, more work, more meals, the same quiet rhythm. It's not a grand life, but it's yours, rooted in the land, sustained by the simple act of eating. The fire in your courtyard burns low, its embers casting a soft glow across the faces of your family. The bowls are empty now, scraped clean of the fava bean stew, and the last sips of beer linger on your tongue. Your children yawn, their heads nodding as they lean against you, the warmth of the day still clinging to their skin. You carry them inside, laying them on their mats, their breathing slow and steady. The night is quiet, save for the faint rustle of palm fronds and the distant call of a night bird. You lie down beside your wife, the mud brick wall cool against your back, and let sleep take you, the river's song weaving through your dreams. Morning arrives with a familiar rhythm. The air is sharp, the dawn light filtering through the reed mat at the doorway. You rise, stretching to ease the stiffness in your shoulders, and step outside to greet the day. The village is waking, Smoke rises from cooking fires, and the low grind of quern stones echoes from nearby houses. Your wife is already at work, her hands dusted with flour, a small pile of ground barley beside her. You smile at her, a silent acknowledgement of the shared routine that binds your days. Today, you'll join the fishermen at the Nile's edge, trading your labor for a share of the catch. You gather a basket of bread and a clay jar of beer, the staples that will sustain you through the morning. The path to the river is well trodden, the earth packed hard by countless feet. You pass fields where the harvest continues, the golden wheat now giving way to patches of green lentils and onions. The Nile is calm today, its surface smooth, reflecting the rising sun like a sheet of polished copper. At the riverbank, the fishermen are already at work, their nets spread across the shallows. You greet them with a nod, setting your basket in the shade of a tamarisk tree. The air smells of mud and fish, a sharp contrast to the dusty fields. You wade into the water, the coolness a relief against your skin, and take hold of a net's edge. The work is steady, pulling, lifting, shaking the net to free the trapped fish. Catfish and perch thrash in the mesh, their scales glinting in the sunlight. The fishermen move with practiced ease, their voices low as they share stories of past catches. You listen, your hands busy, the net heavy with the morning's haul. By mid-morning, the baskets are full, and you pause to eat. You sit on the bank, the mud soft beneath you, and unwrap the bread. It's denser today, made with barley instead of emmer, its texture chewy and slightly nutty. You break it into pieces, sharing with the others, and dip it into a communal pot of lentil paste, thick with garlic and a hint of wild herbs. One of the fishermen offers you a fresh perch, grilled over a small fire built from dried reeds. The fish is small but flavorful, its flesh tender and slightly smoky. You pick through the bones, savoring each bite, and wash it down with a sip of beer. The drink is fresher today, brewed just yesterday, its tang milder than usual. You lean back, the river lapping at the shore, and feel the sun's warmth on your face. These moments of rest, however brief, are a quiet gift. The work resumes, but the mood is lighter now, the mornings catch a good one. You help clean the fish, scraping scales with a flint blade, the silvery flakes catching the light. Some will be eaten fresh tonight, others salted or dried for later. You think of the stew your wife might make, the fish adding a rich depth to the usual beans and onions. Your share is modest, a half-dozen small perch and a single catfish, but it's enough to feed your family for a day or two. As noon approaches, you bid the fishermen farewell, your basket heavier now with fish wrapped in damp reeds. The walk home is slow, the sun high and unrelenting. You pass a group of women washing linens in the river, their laughter carrying across the water. Children chase each other through the fields, their shouts mingling with the calls of ibises wading in the shallows. The village feels alive, its pulse tied to the river and the food it provides. Back home, your wife is kneading dough, her hands moving with the same steady rhythm as the river's flow. You show her the fish, and she nods, already planning the evening's meal. You help her shape the dough into loaves, flattening them with your palms, and place them in the clay oven built into the courtyard wall. The fire is hot, the air shimmering above it, and the bread bakes quickly, its crust darkening to a deep brown. Lunch is simple, leftover stew from last night, warmed over the fire, with fresh bread and a few slices of raw onion. You eat in the shade of the house, the mud brick walls keeping the heat at bay. Your children are playing nearby, weaving tiny baskets from reeds, their chatter a soft background to your meal. The stew is thinner today, stretched to last another day, but the bread makes it filling. You chew slowly, the onion's sharpness cutting through the earthy beans. After lunch, you rest for a moment, lying on a mat in the courtyard. The sky is a brilliant blue, unbroken by clouds, and you watch a hawk circle lazily overhead. Your wife joins you, her hands still smelling of dough, and you talk quietly about the day, the fish, the fields, the rumors of a festival next month. Life is predictable, its patterns worn smooth by repetition, but there's comfort in that sameness. The afternoon is spent repairing a fishing net, your fingers threading flax through the worn patches. It's slow work but necessary. The net a lifeline for the village. Your wife grinds more grain. The querns hum a constant in the background. The children help, carrying small bundles of reeds to the fire, their faces smudged with dust and flour. As evening falls, the village settles into its nightly rhythm. Cooking fires glow, their smoke curling into the darkening sky. Your wife prepares the fish, grilling the perch over the fire and boiling the catfish in a pot with lentils and leeks. The stew simmers, its aroma drawing your children closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. You sit together, the fire's warmth a contrast to the cooling air, and share the meal. The perch is crisp, its skin crackling under your teeth, while the stew is hearty, the catfish's flavor melding with the vegetables. You dip your bread into the broth, its crust softening, and savor the blend of tastes. Smoky fish, sharp leeks, earthy lentils. The beer is poured, its familiar bitterness a perfect end. You eat in silence. The only sounds the crackle of the fire and the soft murmur of the river. Night closes in, the stars bright against the black sky. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and help your wife bank the embers for tomorrow. The children are already asleep, curled on their mats, their breathing soft. You lie down, the day's work heavy in your bones, but your heart is light. Another day fed, another day lived, all sustained by the simple gifts of the Nile. The stars hang heavy in the sky, their light a faint echo of the sun that rules your days. You lie on your mat, the mud brick wall cool against your shoulder, the scent of grilled fish and lentils still lingering in the air. The village is quiet now, its pulse slowed to the rhythm of sleep. The Nile hums softly, its waters carrying the dreams of your people, and you drift into a rest as deep and steady as the river itself. Tomorrow waits with its work and its meals, but for now, there's only the gentle pull of the night. Dawn breaks with a blush of pink across the horizon, the air crisp and heavy with the river's breath. You rise, your body protesting the early hour, and step into the courtyard. The embers from last night's fire are cold, but you coax them back to life with a handful of dried palm fronds. Your wife is already at the grindstone, her hands grinding barley into flour, the familiar scrape a quiet song to start the day. You watch her for a moment, grateful for the routine that anchors your life, grain, bread, and the river's endless gifts. Today, you'll help in the village communal granary, storing the wheat harvested from the fields. It's important work, ensuring the village has enough to eat when the Nile's flood recedes. You pack a basket with bread, a small pot of lentil paste, and a few dried dates, their sticky sweetness a rare treat. The beer jar is heavy, its contents sloshing as you sling it over your shoulder. You kiss your children's foreheads, still warm with sleep, and head out, the village stirring around you. The granary is a low, mud brick building near the village center, its thick walls keeping the grain cool and dry. You join a group of men and women, their hands busy sorting and stacking the wheat. The air is thick with dust, the scent of grain overwhelming, but there's a camaraderie in the work. You pour the wheat into clay bins, checking for signs of rot or pests. The harvest has been good, the bins filling quickly, and you feel a quiet pride in the abundance. By mid-morning, your stomach rumbles, and you gather in the granary's shade for a break. You unwrap the bread, its crust hardened from the morning's heat, and break it into pieces. The lentil paste is thick, flavored with wild garlic and a pinch of salt, and you scoop it up with the bread, the flavors blending. Earthy lentils, sharp garlic, the faint grit of the flour. The dates are shared, their sweetness a burst of joy in the dusty air. You pass the beer jar around, its cloudy contents cool from the granary's shade. The drink is tangy, its fermentation strong today, and you sip slowly, feeling the warmth spread through you. The conversation turns to the Nile, always the Nile. Someone mentions the water's level, lower than last year, and you nod, the worry a familiar weight. The river gives life, but it demands respect, its moods unpredictable. You think of the stories your father told, of years when the flood failed, and bread was made from bitter wild seeds. But today the granary is full, and you push the thought aside, focusing on the bread in your hand, the beer on your lips. The work resumes, the wheat bins growing higher. You help seal the clay lids, pressing them tight to keep out mice and insects. The women sing as they work, a low chant to Happy, the god of the Nile, thanking him for the flood that feeds the fields. You hum along, your voice rough from the dust, and the song weaves through the morning, tying you to the land and its cycles. Lunch is served in the village square, a communal meal for the granary workers. A large pot of chickpea stew simmers over a fire, its surface bubbling with onions and leeks. You line up with the others, holding a clay bowl, and a woman ladles the stew, her hands steady despite the heat. The stew is thick, the chickpeas soft and nutty, and you dip your bread into it, soaking up the broth. Someone has brought a basket of fresh lettuce, its leaves crisp and green, and you take a few, their bitterness a contrast to the stew's warmth. You sit on the ground, the earth packed hard beneath you, and eat slowly, savoring the meal. Children run through the square, their laughter bright, and you watch them, remembering your own childhood. Food was simpler then, but the joy of a shared meal was the same. You finish with a date, its sweetness lingering, and take a final sip of beer, its bitterness cleansing your palate. The afternoon is spent hauling the last of the wheat, your muscles straining under the weight of the baskets. The sun is relentless, its heat pressing against your skin, but the work is nearly done. You think of dinner, imagining the fish stew your wife might prepare, the perch's smoky flavor blending with lentils and herbs. The thought keeps you moving, your steps steady despite the fatigue. As evening falls, you return home, the granary sealed and the village secure for another season. Your wife greets you with a tired smile, her hands busy scaling the fish you brought yesterday. The courtyard is warm, the fire crackling, and you sit with your children, helping them weave reeds into small mats. The stew is simmering, its aroma rich with catfish and leeks, and you feel the day's weight lift, replaced by the comfort of home. Dinner is served as the stars emerge, the sky a deep indigo. The stew is hearty, the fish tender, its bones carefully picked out by your wife. You dip your bread into the broth, its crust softening, and savor the blend of flavors. Smoky fish, earthy lentils, the faint bite of leeks. The beer is poured, its familiar tang a perfect end to the meal. Your children eat quickly, their chatter filling the air, and you listen, grateful for their energy, their presence. The fire dies down, its embers glowing softly. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and help your wife prepare the dough for tomorrow's bread. The quern grinds late into the night, the sound a quiet lullaby. You lie down, the village silent, the rivers murmur a constant in the darkness. Sleep comes easily, your body tired, your stomach full. The day has been long, but the simple act of eating, bread, stew, beer, has carried you through as it always does. The night holds you gently, its cool embrace a balm after the day's heat. Your dreams are soft, filled with the rustle of wheat and the warmth of stew-soaked bread. The Nile's murmur weaves through your sleep, a lullaby older than the village itself. Morning creeps in slowly, the first light slipping through the reed mat at the doorway, painting the mud brick walls in shades of gold. You stir, your body heavy but rested, and rise to meet another day in ancient Egypt, where food is the thread that binds your hours. Outside, the air is crisp, the village waking with the soft clatter of clay pots and the low grind of quern stones. Your wife is already in the courtyard, her hands kneading dough, the flour dusting her fingers like a faint morning mist. You light the fire, feeding it with dried reeds, and the flames leap up, casting a warm glow. The scent of baking bread soon fills the air, a promise of the meal to come. You fetch water from the Nile, the clay jar heavy on your shoulder, and pour it into a bowl, ready for the day's tasks. Today, you'll tend to the vegetable plots near the river, where onions, leeks, and lentils grow in neat rows. You pack a basket with bread, a small pot of dried fish paste, and a handful of fresh lettuce leaves plucked yesterday. The beer jar is slung over your back, its weight familiar. You pause to eat breakfast, tearing into a warm loaf, its crust crisp, its center dense and chewy. You dip it into a paste of lentils, the flavor sharp with garlic, and chew slowly, the grit from the grindstone a faint crunch. A sip of beer, thick and slightly sour, washes it down, waking your senses for the work ahead. The path to the fields winds past date palms and clusters of mud brick houses, the Nile glinting to your right. The vegetable plots are lush, the soil dark and fertile from the flood. You kneel among the onions, pulling weeds and checking the roots for pests. The work is quiet, your hands moving with practiced ease, the earth cool beneath your fingers. Neighbors work nearby, their voices a soft hum, sharing news of the village. A new baby, a broken net, the hope of a good fish catch. By mid-morning, the sun is climbing, its heat pressing against your skin. You pause in the shade of a sycamore, unwrapping your basket. The bread is still soft, and you break it into pieces, dipping it into the fish paste. The paste is salty, its flavor intense, the dried fish ground fine with a touch of wild herbs. The lettuce leaves are crisp, their bitterness a contrast to the paste's richness. You share with a neighbor, trading a piece of bread for a few slices of raw leek, their pungency waking your palate. The beer is warm now, but you sip it anyway, its tang a comfort in the heat. The conversation turns to trade. A merchant is expected tomorrow, bringing salt and perhaps cumin from distant lands. You think of the fish paste, how a pinch of cumin might lift its flavor, but salt is your priority, precious for preserving food through the dry season. You have a basket of dried perch to offer, caught last week, and you hope it's enough for a small jar of salt. Food is more than sustenance here. It's currency, a way to connect with the world beyond the Nile. The work resumes, and you move to the lentil rows, harvesting pods that are ready, their shells dry and rattling. You fill a basket, the lentils a promise of future stews, their nutty flavor a staple in your home. The sun is high now, and sweat beads on your forehead, but the rhythm of the work keeps you steady. You think of lunch, imagining the communal meal the women often prepare for the field workers. A stew, perhaps, or boiled greens with bread. Lunch arrives as the sun peaks, served in the shade of a cluster of palms. A large pot of boiled lentils simmers over a fire, flavored with onions and a rare sprinkle of coriander. You hold out your clay bowl, and a woman ladles the mixture, her hands steady. The lentils are soft, their broth thin but warm, and you dip your bread into it, soaking up the flavors. The lettuce leaves add a fresh crunch, and you eat slowly, the meal grounding you in the day's heat. Someone passes around a jar of dates, their sweetness a small luxury, and you savor one, letting it linger on your tongue. The afternoon is spent repairing the irrigation channels, guiding the Nile's water to the plots. You dig with a wooden hoe, the earth yielding easily, and chat with your neighbors about the coming festival. It's a small one, honoring the local deity, and there may be roasted duck or even a rare taste of beef. The thought of meat, rich and fatty, makes your mouth water, but you know it's the bread and lentils that will carry you through most days. As evening falls, you head home, your basket heavy with lentils and a few onions. The village is alive with the sense of cooking, fish, beans, the ever-present bread. Your wife greets you with a bowl of stew made from yesterday's catfish, its broth thick with leeks and lentils. You sit by the fire, your children at your side, and eat together, the stew's warmth spreading through you. The bread is fresh, its crust crackling, and you dip it into the broth, savoring the blend of smoky fish and earthy vegetables. The beer is poured, its bitterness cutting through the stew's richness. Your children chatter about the merchant's arrival, hoping for a glimpse of exotic goods, though you know your trade will be practical, salt, not dreams. You eat in silence, the fire's glow softening the edges of the day. The meal is simple, but it's enough, a quiet testament to the Nile's generosity. Night settles over the village, the air cool and heavy with the river's scent. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and help your wife grind grain for tomorrow's bread. The quern's hum is a lullaby, blending with the Nile's murmur. You lie down, the stars bright through the doorway, and feel the day's weight lift. Sleep comes easily, your body tired, your heart full. The river flows on, carrying the promise of another day, another meal, another moment of life by the Nile. The night enfolds you like a woven reed mat, soft and familiar, the Nile's gentle hum a thread through your dreams. You see fields of golden wheat, baskets of fish, and the warm glow of a fire, the sense of bread and stew lingering even in sleep. Dawn arrives quietly, the first light slipping over the river, casting long shadows across the village. You rise, your body stiff from yesterday's work, and step into the courtyard, where the air is cool and heavy with the promise of another day. Food, as always, is the rhythm that will carry you through. Your wife is at the fire, stirring a pot of leftover stew, its surface bubbling faintly. The grindstone sits silent for now, the flour from last night's work stored in a clay pot. You kneel beside her, adding dried palm fronds to the flames, and the fire flares, warming your hands. The merchant is coming today, and the village is abuzz with anticipation. You pack a basket with bread, a small jar of lentil paste, and the dried perch you've saved for trade. The beer jar is heavy, its contents sloshing as you prepare for the day's work. Breakfast is quick but comforting. You tear into a loaf of barley bread, its texture dense and nutty, and dip it into the warmed stew, the catfish's smoky flavor softened by leeks. Your children join you, their eyes bright with excitement about the merchant's goods. You hand them each a piece of bread, smeared with lentil paste, and pour a cup of beer, diluted for them with water. The drink is tangy, its fermentation mild, and you sip slowly, savoring the moment before the day's bustle begins. Today you'll help at the riverbank, where the merchant's boat is expected. You walk through the village, the path lined with date palms and the chatter of neighbors. The Nile is calm, its surface shimmering in the morning light, and you reach the bank where a crowd is gathering. The boat appears, its reed hull low in the water, laden with jars and baskets. The merchant, a wiry man with a sun-darkened face, calls out greetings, his voice carrying over the water. You help unload the goods, your hands busy with clay jars of salt, bundles of cumin, and even a rare sack of chickpeas from a distant land. The air is thick with the scents of spices and dried fish, a contrast to the village's usual smells. In return, you offer your basket of dried perch, carefully preserved in the sun's heat. The merchant inspects them, nodding, and hands you a small jar of salt, enough to preserve food for weeks. You feel a quiet satisfaction, knowing the salt will stretch your meals through the dry season. By mid-morning, your stomach growls, and you join the others in the shade of a tamarisk tree. You unwrap your bread, its crust hardened but still good, and dip it into the lentil paste, its garlic flavor sharp and comforting. The merchant offers a taste of his own food, a flatbread spiced with cumin, its aroma exotic and warm. You trade a piece of your bread for a bite, the cumin's earthy heat a revelation. The beer is shared, its cloudy tang grounding you in the familiar, and you eat slowly, the river lapping at the shore. The conversation buzzes with talk of trade. How much salt for a basket of lentils, whether the cumin is worth the cost. You listen, your mind on the salt jar, already imagining the fish you'll preserve for the lean months. Food preservation is a constant concern, a way to outsmart the Nile's unpredictable moods. You think of the fish drying on reed racks, the lentils stored in sealed pots, the bread kept in baskets to fend off mold. Every meal is a balance of now and later, a dance with the seasons. The work resumes, and you help carry the merchant's goods to the village square, where women barter for spices and men inspect tools. By noon, the trading is done, and the merchant prepares to leave, his boat lighter now. You return home for lunch, the salt jar tucked safely in your basket. Your wife has prepared a simple meal, boiled greens flavored with a pinch of your new salt and fresh bread, its crust still warm. You eat in the courtyard, the greens bitter but refreshing, the bread soaking up the faint saltiness. A few dates traded from a neighbor add a sweet finish, and you sip beer, its bitterness cleansing your palate. The afternoon is spent preserving the fish you caught earlier. You clean the perch, scraping their scales with a flint blade and rub them with the new salt, its crystals glinting in the sun. The fish are laid on reed racks, raised to catch the breeze, and you check them carefully, ensuring they'll dry evenly. Your wife grinds more grain, the querns hum a steady backdrop, and you help her knead the dough, your hands sticky with flour and water. As evening falls, the village settles into its familiar rhythm. Cooking fires glow, their smoke curling into the sky, and the scent of roasting fish fills the air. Your wife prepares a stew of lentils and onions, thickened with a piece of yesterday's bread crumbled into the pot. You sit by the fire, your children weaving reeds into tiny figures, their laughter soft in the cooling air. The stew is served, its broth rich and hearty, the lentils soft against the sharp bite of onion. You dip your bread, its crust softening, and savor the meal, the salt's faint presence a quiet triumph. The beer is poured, its cloudy surface frothy, and you drink deeply, the day's work easing from your bones. Your children eat quickly, their eyes heavy, and you carry them to their mats, their breathing slow and steady. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and sit with your wife, the stars bright overhead. The Nile murmurs, its voice a constant, and you talk quietly about the merchant's visit, the salt, the promise of preserved food. Sleep calls and you lie down, the mud brick wall cool against your back. The village is silent, save for the river's song, and you drift off, your dreams filled with the scents of cumin and salted fish. The day has been long, but the simple act of eating, bread, stew, beer, has woven it together, a tapestry of routine and resilience, sustained by the Nile's endless flow. The night wraps you in its quiet embrace, the stars above like scattered grains of wheat against the dark. Your dreams are woven with the sense of salt and stew, the Nile's murmur a constant thread pulling you through sleep. Dawn creeps over the horizon, its light soft and golden, slipping through the reed mat at your doorway. You rise, the air cool against your skin, and step into the courtyard, where the village is stirring, its rhythm as steady as the river itself. Another day in ancient Egypt begins, and food, as always, is its heartbeat. Your wife is by the fire, her hands shaping dough, the flour dusting her fingers like a faint morning dew. The embers glow, fed by a handful of dried reeds, and the scent of baking bread begins to rise, warm and earthy. You fetch a clay jar of water from the Nile, its weight familiar on your shoulder, and pour it into a bowl, ready for the day's tasks. The fish you salted yesterday are drying on their racks, their scales glinting in the early light, a promise of meals to come. Breakfast is simple, a ritual that grounds you. You tear into a loaf of emmer bread, its crust crisp, its center dense with the faint tang of fermentation. You dip it into a paste of chickpeas, ground fine with a touch of wild garlic, its flavor sharp and warming. Your children sit beside you, their eyes still heavy with sleep, and you hand them each a piece of bread, smeared with the paste. The beer is poured, its cloudy surface frothy, and you sip slowly, the mild bitterness waking your senses. The meal is quick, but it's enough to carry you into the day. Today, you'll gather wild herbs along the riverbank, a task to prepare for a small festival honoring the local deity. The village is planning a modest celebration, with food shared in the square, and you want to contribute something infallibly. You pack a basket with bread, a pot of lentil stew, and a few fresh leeks, their green tops bright and crisp. The beer jar is slung over your back, its weight a familiar comfort. You kiss your children's foreheads and head out, the village alive with the chatter of festival preparations. The riverbank is lush, the air thick with the scent of mud and greenery. You walk along the edge, careful to avoid the marshy patches where crocodiles might lurk. The wild herbs, coriander, dill, and mint, grow in clumps, their leaves fragrant when you brush them with your hand. You gather them carefully, filling a reed basket, their sharp scents mingling with the river's earthy breath. Neighbors work nearby, collecting reeds and fish for the festival, their voices a soft hum of anticipation. By mid-morning, the sun is warm, and you pause in the shade of a date palm. You unwrap your bread, its texture chewy, and dip it into the lentil stew, its broth thick with onions and a pinch of your new salt. The leeks are crisp, their pungency cutting through the stew's earthiness, and you eat slowly, savoring the blend of flavors. You share with a neighbor, trading a leek for a dried fig, its sweetness a small luxury. The beer is warm but refreshing, its tang grounding you in the moment. The conversation turns to the festival, talk of roasted duck, honeyed bread, and perhaps a rare taste of goat meat. You imagine the village square alive with firelight, the air thick with the sense of food and song. Herbs like the ones you're gathering will flavor the dishes, a gift to the gods and each other. You think of the coriander, how its sharp bite will lift the stew, and feel a quiet pride in your contribution. The work resumes, and you move deeper along the bank, finding a patch of wild mint, its leaves soft and fragrant. You fill your basket, the herbs a vibrant green against the reeds. The sun climbs higher, its heat pressing against your skin, but the task is calming, your hands moving with the river's rhythm. You think of lunch, hoping the women have prepared something special for the festival workers, perhaps boiled greens or a fish stew. Lunch is served in the village square, where tables are being set for tomorrow's feast. A large pot of boiled greens simmers over a fire, flavored with garlic and a sprinkle of coriander from last year's harvest. You hold out your clay bowl, and a woman ladles the greens, their steam rising in the heat. The bread is fresh, its crust crackling, and you dip it into the greens, their bitterness softened by the garlic. Someone passes around a jar of dates, their sticky sweetness a treat, and you sip beer, its bitterness cleansing your palate. The afternoon is spent cleaning the herbs, stripping their leaves and bundling them for the festival cooks. You sit in the courtyard, your wife beside you, her hands busy with dough for tomorrow's bread. The children help, their small fingers clumsy but eager, and you smile the moment a quiet gift. The herbs are stored in clay pots, their scents filling the air, a promise of the feast to come. As evening falls, the village glows with cooking fires, the scent of fish and lentils drifting through the air. Your wife prepares a simple stew, using the last of the catfish and a handful of your fresh leeks. You sit by the fire, your children weaving reed baskets, their chatter bright with festival excitement. The stew is served, its broth rich and smoky, the leeks adding a sharp bite. You dip your bread, its crust softening, and savor the meal, the day's work settling into your bones. The beer is poured, its cloudy tang a perfect end. You eat in silence, the fire's glow warming your family. The children yawn, their eyes heavy, and you carry them to their mats, their breathing soft. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and sit with your wife, the stars bright overhead. The Nile hums, its voice eternal, and you talk of the festival, the herbs, the hope of a good feast. Sleep calls and you lie down, the mud brick wall cool against your back. The village is silent, save for the river's song, and you drift off, your dreams filled with the sense of mint and roasted duck. The day has been long, but the simple act of eating, bread, greens, beer, has carried you through, a quiet thread in the tapestry of life by the Nile. The night cradles you softly, its darkness a blanket woven with the Nile's eternal song. Your dreams are vivid, filled with the flicker of festival fires and the scent of herbs crushed underfoot. The stars wheel slowly overhead, and dawn arrives with a gentle glow, the light slipping through the reed mat at your doorway. You rise, the air cool and heavy with the river's breath, and step into the courtyard, where the village hums with the excitement of the festival. Today is special, but food, as always, remains the heart of your world. Your wife is already at work, her hands shaping dough into small, round loaves, some adorned with herb leaves for the festival. The fire crackles, fed by dried palm fronds, and the scent of baking bread fills the air, mingling with the faint tang of fermenting beer. You fetch a clay jar of water, its weight grounding you, and pour it into a bowl ready for the day's tasks. The herbs you gathered yesterday are neatly bundled, their green leaves fragrant, waiting to flavor the communal feast. Breakfast is hurried but warm. You tear into a loaf of barley bread, its crust crisp, its center chewy with a hint of honey, a rare treat for the festival. You dip it into a paste of lentils, flavored with your fresh coriander, its sharp bite waking your senses. Your children are buzzing with excitement, their chatter bright as they nibble on bread smeared with chickpea paste. You pour beer, its cloudy surface frothy, and sip slowly, the mild bitterness steadying you for the day ahead. The meal is simple, but it carries the promise of the feast to come. Today is the festival, and you'll help prepare the communal meal in the village square. You pack a basket with bread, a pot of lentil stew, and a few fresh onions, their pungency sharp in the morning air. The beer jar is slung over your shoulder, its contents sloshing softly. You walk through the village, the paths alive with neighbors carrying baskets of fish, greens, and jars of honey. The square is bustling, tables set with reed mats, and fires glow under large clay pots, their smoke curling into the sky. You join the cooks, a group of women and men stirring pots and grilling fish. You offer your herbs, and a woman smiles, crushing the coriander and mint into a stew of lentils and leeks. The air is thick with scents, smoky fish, earthy beans, the sharp tang of herbs. You help clean a basket of perch, scraping their scales with a flint blade, and lay them on a reed mat to be grilled. The work is steady, your hands moving with the rhythm of the village, its pulse quickened by the festival's joy. By mid-morning, your stomach rumbles, and you pause with the others in the shade of a sycamore. You unwrap your bread, its texture dense, and dip it into the lentil stew, its broth warm and rich with onions. The onions are crisp, their bite cutting through the stew's earthiness, and you share with a neighbor, trading a piece of bread for a grilled fish, its flesh tender and smoky. The beer is passed around, its tang refreshing in the heat, and you eat slowly, the square alive with laughter and song. The conversation buzzes with festival talk, stories of past feasts, hopes for a good harvest, prayers to the gods. You think of the stew you're helping prepare, how the coriander you gathered will lift its flavor, a small offering to the village and the deity. Food is more than sustenance today. It's a gift, a way to bind the community under the gods' watchful eyes. You feel a quiet pride, your herbs a thread in the festival's tapestry. The work resumes, and you help stir a pot of chickpea stew, its surface bubbling with garlic and your mint. The fish are grilling, their skins crackling over the fire, and someone is baking honeyed bread, its sweetness drifting through the air. The square is a hive of activity, children weaving reed decorations, priests chanting prayers, musicians tuning flutes. You move between tasks, your hands busy, your heart light with the shared purpose. Lunch is served to the workers, a preview of the feast. A large pot of roasted duck simmers, its meat tender and fatty, flavored with cumin and coriander. You hold out your clay bowl and a man ladles the duck, its aroma rich and warm. The bread is fresh, its crust studded with herbs, and you dip it into the stew, savoring the blend of gamey meat and sharp spices. Someone passes around a jar of figs, their sweetness a rare delight, and you sip beer, its bitterness cleansing your palate. The afternoon is spent finishing the preparations. You help set out clay cups and bowls, arranging them on the tables. The stew pots are moved to the fire's edges, keeping warm, and the grilled fish are stacked on reed mats, their scales glinting. The honeyed bread is piled high, its scent drawing children who linger hopefully nearby. You smile, remembering your own childhood, the thrill of festival food, a bright spot in the routine of bread and lentils. As evening falls, the festival begins. The square glows with firelight, the air thick with the scents of duck, fish, and herbs. The priests lead a prayer, their voices rising to thank the gods for the Nile's bounty. You stand with your family, your children clutching your hands, their eyes wide. The feast is served, and you fill your bowl with chickpea stew, its minty warmth a comfort. The duck is shared, its meat rich, and you tear into the honeyed bread, its sweetness lingering on your tongue. The beer flows freely, its tang sharp in the cool night air. Musicians play, their flutes and drums a lively pulse, and the village dances, their shadows flickering in the firelight. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, the food a celebration of survival and community. Your children run through the crowd, their laughter bright, and you sit with your wife, the stars bright overhead. The night deepens and the feast winds down. You clean your bowl, stacking it with the others, and help bank the fires for tomorrow. The village is quiet now, the music fading, the Nile's murmur rising once more. You walk home, your stomach full, your heart light. Sleep calls and you lie down, the mud brick wall cool against your back. The day has been long, but the feast, duck, stew, honeyed bread, has woven it into something sacred, a moment of joy by the Nile. The night settles over you like a soft linen sheet, the Nile's murmur blending with the fading echoes of festival drums. Your dreams are warm, filled with the glow of firelight and the taste of honeyed bread, the village's laughter lingering in your sleep. Dawn creeps in, its light soft and golden, slipping through the reed mat at your doorway. You rise, your body heavy with the festival's joy, and step into the courtyard, where the air is cool and the village stirs slowly, recovering from the feast. Food, as always, is the thread that weaves your day together. Your wife is already at work, sweeping the courtyard, the embers from last night's fire cold and gray. The grindstone waits, a pile of barley nearby, ready to become tomorrow's bread. You light a new fire, feeding it with dried reeds, and the flames flicker, casting a gentle warmth. The festival's leftovers, bits of bread, a jar of stew, are stored in clay pots, a rare bounty to stretch the next few meals. You fetch a clay jar of water, its weight steadying you, and pour it into a bowl, the day's tasks calling. Breakfast is a quiet affair, the festival's richness still lingering in your memory. You tear into a piece of leftover honeyed bread, its sweetness faded but still delightful, and dip it into a thin lentil paste, flavored with yesterday's mint. Your children join you, their eyes bright despite the late night, and you hand them each a small piece of bread, smeared with chickpea paste. The beer is poured, its tang milder today, and you sip slowly, the familiar bitterness grounding you after the feast's indulgence. The meal is simple, but it carries the echo of celebration. Today, you'll help clean the village square and tend to the livestock, ensuring the goats and cattle are fed after the festival's bustle. You pack a basket with bread, a pot of boiled greens, and a few dried figs, their sweetness a small luxury. The beer jar is slung over your shoulder, its contents sloshing softly. You walk to the square, the village quieter than usual, the air still thick with the scents of roasted duck and herbs. Neighbors are already at work, sweeping reed mats and stacking clay bowls, their voices soft with shared memories. You join the cleanup, gathering scattered reeds and scrubbing pots with river sand. The square feels different now, its magic faded but warm with the afterglow of community. You help carry the leftover food, bread, stew, a few pieces of fish, to the granary where it will be shared among the neediest families. Food is never wasted here, each scrap a gift from the Nile, and you feel a quiet pride in the village's care for its own. By mid-morning, your stomach rumbles and you pause in the shade of a palm tree. You unwrap your bread, its crust hardened, and dip it into the boiled greens, their bitterness softened by a pinch of salt. The figs are shared, their sweetness a burst of joy, and you sip beer, its cloudy tang refreshing in the heat. A neighbor offers a piece of grilled fish, saved from the feast, and you trade a fig for a bite, its smoky flavor a reminder of last night's joy. The meal is quick, but it binds you to the others, a quiet continuation of the festival's spirit. The conversation turns to the livestock, a vital part of the village survival. You'll tend to the goats this afternoon, ensuring they're healthy for milking and, on rare occasions, meat. You finish cleaning and head to the pens, where the goats bleat softly, their eyes curious. You lead them to a patch of green near the river, where they graze on wild grasses and reeds. The work is calm, your hands busy repairing a wooden fence, the sun warm on your back. Lunch is served by the river, a communal meal for the herders. A pot of lentil stew simmers over a small fire, flavored with leeks and a hint of coriander. You hold out your clay bowl, and a woman ladles the stew, its steam rising in the noon air. The bread is fresh, its crust crackling, and you dip it into the broth, savoring the earthy lentils and sharp leeks. Someone passes around a jar of dates, their stickiness a treat, and you sip beer, its bitterness cleansing your palate. The afternoon is spent tending the goats, checking their hooves and milking a few for the village's needs. The milk is collected in clay jars, a rare ingredient for cheese or sour milk to flavor stews. You think of the festival, how a small piece of cheese might have elevated the feast, but such luxuries are for special days. The goats are content, they're grazing a quiet rhythm, and you feel the day's work settle into your bones, steady and familiar. As evening falls, you lead the goats back to their pens, the village glowing with cooking fires. Your wife greets you with a bowl of stew made from festival leftovers, lentils, fish, and a touch of mint. You sit by the fire, your children at your side, their chatter soft after the festival's excitement. The stew is hearty, its flavors melding, and you dip your bread, its crust softening in the broth. The meal is simple, but it carries the festival's warmth, a reminder of shared abundance. The beer is poured, its cloudy surface frothy, and you drink deeply, the day's fatigue easing. Your children yawn, their eyes heavy, and you carry them to their mats, their breathing slow. You clean the bowls, stacking them by the fire, and sit with your wife, the stars bright overhead. The Nile hums, its voice eternal, and you talk of the festival, the livestock, the promise of milk for tomorrow's meals. Sleep calls and you lie down, the mud brick wall cool against your back. The village is silent, save for the river's song, and you drift off, your dreams filled with the bleating of goats and the taste of stew. The day has been long, but the simple act of eating, bread, greens, beer, has woven it together, a quiet thread in the tapestry of life by the Nile.